Hello friends, welcome back to another video, and a special hello if you are new. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you know that I really do appreciate that, and I appreciate your time. Today I'm going to be sharing with you the books on my summer TBR. I find TBRs to be a little stressful. I put a lot of pressure on myself to keep them. I can't just pick out like 10 books and pick and choose from those books throughout the season or whatever. So I tend to keep my TBRs a little on the shorter side, and that way I can kind of pick and choose and mood read and work my way through them and like check them all off my list. That's just what works best in my brain. But anyway, let's go ahead and start talking about the books I've picked out. The first book that I have is a reread, and it is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. As you can tell probably by the condition of this book, I've read it quite a few times. This is one of my favorite books to read, and it's a book that I like to come back to every few summers. It's set in summer, so I think it's just kind of the perfect summer read. I feel like everyone pretty much knows what To Kill a Mockingbird is about, but it is told through the eyes of a young girl named Scout. I feel like she's probably like 7, 8 years old. It's set in like the 50s or 60s in a small town in the South. Her father, Atticus Finch, is a really respected lawyer in her community. A lot of people really look up to him, and they just kind of think that he is the epitome of a good man. So when Atticus decides to defend a black man who's been unjustly accused of a crime against a white woman, it really divides the town, and it brings out a lot of really nasty behavior. And again, this is all being seen through the eyes of a child, which I think was just such a great creative choice. And I just feel that this is such an important novel. I think that it's one that it's important to continually reread. And I think like despite its relevance like in the 60s, I think when it was published, it's so important now. And it's just a book that I feel like I will always come back to. I didn't read this book until I was an adult. I feel like most people kind of approach it in like as a child, I guess, more so like in, I don't know, like preteen, high school years. But if you've not read this one, or maybe it's been a really long time since you've picked it up, I just highly recommend you do so. Kind of keeping in tune with a summery theme, the next book I have is The Lie and Life of Adults by Elena Ferrante. I actually got this book when it was first published a few years ago. I don't remember what year it was published. But when it first came out, I saw a lot of like mixed reviews. There were people whose opinions I really trust when it comes to books, like on Goodreads and things like that, that like didn't rate it as highly as I thought I would, or as I thought they would, I guess rather. So I kind of just kept it on my shelf, because when I went to read this one, I didn't want to be influenced by anyone else's opinions. I wanted to form my own opinion. Every Elena Ferrante book that I've read has been during summertime, and I think like just being set in Italy and things like that, I just associate her books with summer. But this, I think, is a coming-of-age story. It tells the story of a young girl. Her name is Giovanna, and basically she's kind of leaving childhood and going into adulthood, and she hears her father remark to her mother about how she is turning ugly. And so it's basically this coming-of-age. I know that it's set in Naples, and so she spends time within the lower, more poverty-stricken Naples, and then like a higher class Naples, and it's just like that bounce back and forth of that. I think there's a lot of like, with a lot of Ferrante novels, there's going to be a lot of like, it's going to be heavily character-driven and just a really interesting character setting. I think there's going to be some really interesting like commentary about like society's perceptions of beauty. I'm really excited to read this one finally, and kind of excited to see like what I think about it, especially because, like I said, it's been a few years since I've read anyone else's thoughts or opinions on it, and this isn't a book that I really see, especially out of Ferrante's, that I kind of see circulated kind of heavily. So very excited for this one, and I will definitely report back on what I think of it. Every summer, I love to pick a really big classic and work through. I think it just comes from like being a student, and then I taught for a few years. So summer was like the time when I had nothing to do, and I would pick out a massive classic and work through. And the classic that I really wanted to read this summer was The Count of Monte Cristo. I've never read it, but I really want the Penguin cloth bound edition, and it is like $30 some from like my local bookstore or like Barnes and Noble. So I've put it on hold, and I already had this one on my shelf. So this is the classic I'm going to be working through this summer, and it is Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. This tells of a man named Gulliver. I think he's a doctor on a ship, and they go to all of these fantastical lands and meet these like fantastical people. I think it's a little bit of fantasy based. I don't really know a ton about this book, if you can't tell. But I think there's a lot of like philosophical meanings and kind of ramblings in here, and a lot of like social commentary. I think that this book is satire. So even though it's a lot shorter than like The Count of Monte Cristo would have been, I feel like it might take me a little bit to get through it, like a little bit longer than if I like picked up like a Jane Austen book or like To Kill a Mockingbird or something like that. So I'm really excited to kind of get into this one. I love reading classics, and I feel like I've read most, like, you know, your top like 20 or 30 classics. So this is one that I've not read, and it's again one that I've not really seen a lot of people talk about or, you know, kind of form opinions on. So again, I'm just really excited to kind of get into this one and see what I think about it. And as always, again, I will report back on my thoughts, but yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to get into this one. My next few books don't exactly fit the summer theme, but I wanted to include them anyway. It's also about to storm here, so if like the lighting is changing, I'm sorry. But it is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This tells the story of Shakespeare's wife, Agnes, I think is her name. And I think it follows her grief and because they lose their young son, Hamnet, to the plague. That's all I know about this one. This is one of these books that I bought a few years ago, and it's one of those books that I'm always like, I'm going to pick that book up next. Like, I'm going to finish this series, and then I'm going to read Hamnet, or I'm going to finish my winter TBR or whatever, and then I'm going to pick up Hamnet, and I never do. So I decided to add it to my TBR because now I have to. Like, I have to check it off the list. And I'm really, really excited to get into this one. I've heard so many amazing things, and I know that even though like it follows Shakespeare's family, I don't think Shakespeare is referred to by name. It's always like Agnes's husband or something like that. And I think that's going to be really like just cool to read about. I also know that this is being turned into a film, and I feel like the film will probably come out maybe sometime within the next year or so. But it has a lot of actors who I really love to see on screen. It has Jessie Buckley in it, and Paul Mescal, who I always feel like he picks really good scripts, and Joe Alwyn. I adore him, so I'm very excited to read this one. Next, I have some nonfiction for you, and it is The Old Ways by Robert Macfarlane. So just kind of a side note about Robert Macfarlane. I am a massive Johnny Flynn fan. I adore him so much. He is who plays Mr. Knightley in the 2020 Emma, and he also is a musician, and I love him so much. Like, I have been in the top like 0.001% of his listeners for the past few years. I love him so much. But anyway, his last 2 albums have been recorded with Robert Macfarlane, and so I really wanted to read something by Robert Macfarlane. He's a nature writer, and I just, I wanted to kind of read because obviously I've enjoyed the music that he's co-written with Johnny Flynn. So I ended up, this is, again, a little bit of a long story, but I was at my mom and dad's, and I was going through my books when I put my bookshelf in here because we don't have enough storage space here for me to have all of my books and my bookshelves. So a lot of books are at storage at my mom and dad's. When I was going through my books, I found this book by Robert Macfarlane. I have no idea what provoked me to buy this book. I've probably had it for years. I don't know if I was gifted it. I don't know where this book came from, but I was really, really excited to have it. And I know he has a newer book out. I don't know what it's called, but it's like about rivers that looks really good. So, but anyway, I'm really excited to give him a try. So this is, it says it folds together natural history, geology, and literature. It's basically kind of a memoir where Robert Macfarlane sets off to follow ancient routes across British landscape. it says his journeys take him to England, Scotland, Palestine, Spain, and the Himalayas. And I just think, I don't know, I've not really read a lot of nonfiction that isn't like a memoir or a biography. So I'm kind of curious to see what I think of like this type of like history, travel, nature nonfiction. And I don't know, this is one that I'm really, really excited for, and I have high expectations for it, so I hope I enjoy it. The last book that I have for you is a book that I was really reluctant to put on my TBR, just because it's a book I know realistically I'm not going to have finished come like the end of September. But I really want to read it, and I want to start to work through it this summer. And it is Alexander Hamilton by Chernow. I don't know how to say his last name. But this is the biography that inspired the musical Hamilton by Lin-Manuel Miranda. If you watched my last video, then you know that I have been on a huge Hamilton kick pretty much ever since the Tonys, but honestly, probably the past year or so. I have just been listening to the musical just completely. Like, I can recite from song 1 all the way to the end. I'm not joking, as my husband. And I don't know, I've been doing like a little bit of deep dives. I tend to get really fascinated with different historical figures, and I just want to learn like everything there is about them. So I've been doing like little deep dives on Hamilton, and I've like gotten on Reddit pages where I've read, you know, like, did he really father, you know, another child when he was a teenager? You know, did he intentionally throw away his shot because he no longer wanted to exist in the world, and he was kind of, you know, taking down Aaron Burr and not having to exist anymore? You know, all of these different things and theories. And I just have been so fascinated with it for, like I said, probably the past year. So it's time to tackle the beast. I used to read kind of more dense biographies quite a bit, and I haven't in a really long time, so I feel like it's gonna take a while to get through this. But again, I'm really excited, and I think with the way things are in the US, and with times feeling like we can be in like a constitutional crisis, or history's being erased, and obviously it's not the history of a white man that's being erased, but I don't know, I just want to learn more about the founding of our country. And I just think that this is, sorry, our neighbor's dog is barking, but I feel like this is potentially a really good place to start. All right, friends, that sums up my summer TBR. Please let me know if you've read any of these books and what you think about them, or if you have any recommendations for me. I hope that you are having the best day. And again, thank you so much for being here. There are 100 of you here, and I know that is such a small number of people, but 100 people in the world have clicked on my videos or clicked on my channel and been like, yeah, I want to continue watching her. And I just want to give you all a hug. Like, I hope you find buried treasure in your backyard. I love you. It makes me so happy. I don't know, but anyway, thank you again for being here and listening to me babble on about books. I'll see you next time. Bye.